So that is not an explicit residence requirement, but in some countries there is certainly an implicit residence requirement, and this is, for instance, also the case for Spain and Portugal. And there were some problems like you need a civil registration number or you need a social security number in the host member state to get the right to assistance by employment offices, and not always people had the civil registration number or social security number. And a practical obstacle we came across was that sometimes it's not possible to register as a job seeker online. Then the second right is the right to right to training. Right to training in vocational schools and retraining centers. Similarly to the right to assistance by employment officers, the right to training in vocational schools and retraining centers is generally not subject to an explicit residence requirement, but also here de facto implicit residence requirements can play a role. You have to have the condition to be a job seeker residing in the concerned member state to get the right to retraining in vocational schools and retraining centers, or you have to have a durational past or future employment conditions which are often imposed as conditions in order to gain access to vocational schools and retraining centers. This is something which counts for Spain and Portugal as well. So the next one, I'll try to do it very carefully now. Yes. This is an easy one, the right to membership of trade unions and the right attached to them. Membership of trade unions and the right associated thereto as a constitutionally protected right in most member states is not subject to residence requirements and is guaranteed both legally and in practice to frontier workers. And we didn't come across any obstacles, and the sole difficulties that we have been observed were of a practical nature, but that doesn't count between Spain and Portugal, of course, by means of example linguistic difficulties. Then the most difficult category, the rights to main social advantages, the educational benefits, the study grants, the family benefits, the activation measures and the social assistance. And there are large discrepancies again exist amongst member states as to the exportability of various benefits, and there are also a lot of residence requirements or duration of employment conditions which make it difficult for frontier workers to have these social advantages in the country they are working. And this counts, for instance, for Spain and Portugal as well. And sometimes you only have rights to some kind of social advantages if you have a sufficient degree of integration in the member state of employment. And as a frontier worker, you don't have this degree of integration in the member state of employment because you are still residing in your own country. Then the last one. No, this is taxes. There's also, although we were not allowed to do anything on double taxations, there are problems with tax incentives, rebate schemes, tax exemptions. The tax residency is implemented as a means to distinguish between works in the member state, and sometimes it's based on the income threshold. In some countries it's 75% or sometimes 90% earned in the member state. And in some countries there is the system that you have to stay for 183 days in a given year to have your tax paid over there. This already gives problems, but it also gives problems that sometimes tax benefits, like tax incentives, like tax exemptions, are only for residents. So if you are, for instance, working in Spain and you are living in Portugal and you are taxed by the Portuguese tax because of the double tax agreement between Spain and Portugal, you will not have the tax incentives and tax exemptions from the country you're working in because they are not you're not applicable for that. And the bilateral double taxation treaties they are not able to avoid all the problems provided for equal access to tax advantages. They provide or avoid the problem of double taxations, but not the problem of equal access to tax advantages. And then this is the last one, the right to benefits concerning housing. Well, social housing and additional financial benefits are usually subject to a residence requirement, and residence requirements with respect to housing advantages. They vary somewhat in their application, but they are primarily based on durational residence requirements. And in some member states, you need a past residence requirement. In other member states, these housing benefits are conditioned upon the fulfillment of future residence and consumer establishment. But it's all disadvantage for the frontier workers. And in certain member states, you only can get housing benefits if you have the receipt of other kind of benefits which you are not entitled to as well. Then we left the possibility for additional obstacles, and there, of course, the linguistic differences were observed, for instance, in Belgium and Germany. There was, again, what we already found in our earlier studies, which we read, there's a lack of information and knowledge to the legal status of frontier workers and the publications thereof. There is a lack of, that was, I think, Jan already mentioned, lack of mutual recognition of professional and academic qualifications. Therefore, that's seen as a substantial hindrance to the free movement of frontier workers. And there is a lack of cooperation between competent authorities and administrations in the various member states. And that still is an obstacle to cross-border mobility. And the report of Portugal mentioned also the problem of accessing bank credit, the problem of the transportation in cross-border situations, and the problem of the mobile communication in cross-border situations, because there are substantial roaming costs. So, to conclude, and in the report we have an overall view, but we also have a fiche per country where we try to have all these rights which can be derived from regulation 492 detailed per country, which is happening in which country, where there are or residence requirements, or de facto residence requirements, or other obstacles. If we look at the explicit or implicit residence requirements, we can certainly be considered this as one of the main obstacles. And one of the things which is, I think, a good idea is that we assess per benefit or advantage, if there are problems, whether it is proportionate or not. So don't say we will abolish all residence requirements, but have a look at the benefit or the advantage which you are looking at, and see whether there is a proportionate assessment. Then frontier workers, they do have, you have to bear in mind that frontier workers, they do have some particular characteristics. They have stronger links with the member state in question than ordinary non-residents do, and they work in the host member state and may be fully taxable there. So they contribute to the economy, and they may have stronger social ties with the member state of employment. That has to be kept in mind if you try to see whether you want to abolish explicit or implicit residence requirements. And then, as a last point, if you look at the importance the Court of Justice pays to the so-called closest link theory, according to which a new solidarity arises and a worker or a European citizen should be identified with the state where one is mostly integrated with, it is not unreasonable to take all these factors into consideration and then determining the eligibility for benefits. But although residence is sometimes the most logical criterion to take into account when defining where one is mostly integrated, for instance for frontier workers, it's only one of the many elements that can be taken into account. And that were the recommendations we sent to the Commission, and that's where the report ends.
esta interessante intervenção que nos mostra que neste espaço sem fronteiras internas, onde a livre circulação de pessoas devia ser assegurada, ainda existem muitos obstáculos, muitas fronteiras que impedem, no fundo, e que dificultam